Cool. Can everyone hear me all right? I'll take that as a yes. Cool. Welcome everyone to our Washington Wild's first ever digital event, our Earth Day Happy Hour series. My name is Chris Chappell. I am the Conservation and Brewshed Program Coordinator at Washington Wild. So we're really excited to engage you all on, some conservation issues that are important to all Washingtonians through these events around the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which is this Wednesday. So kind of how all of these will go is we'll start off with a short video about the 40th anniversary of Washington Wild, a little bit more information about our organization, and then we'll kind of launch into the issue of the day, today's being the Wild Olympics campaign. We'll show a short video, then we'll hear from our executive director, Tom, and then we'll hear from a couple more Washington Wild staff, and if we have time at the end, we will do a quick Q&A session. So yeah, we will dig into the Washington Wild video now.
On a September evening in 1979, a handful of conservation activists met at the College Inn in Seattle's University District. Hours later, a new organization was born, Washington Wilderness Coalition.
So I've lived in Washington State for 30 years, and it is a diverse state in that it has the Pacific Ocean, mountains, rainforests, deserts, lakes, rivers. Washington Wild is a local organization that protects all of that for all of us. And that is why I'm a proud volunteer for the Washington Wild organization.
Today known as Washington Wild, over the past 40 years, the organization has led efforts to protect nearly 3 million acres of designated wilderness throughout Washington State.
I'm Yvonne Krause. I'm the Executive Director of the Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance. We as mountain bikers have been working with Washington Wild on a very unique challenge of wanting to support wilderness and supporting that in Washington State, and at the same time losing access when we do so. So it's a unique challenge for us as mountain bikers. It's a very rare partnership with Washington Wild. We've been able to make that happen together, looking at wilderness boundaries, looking at trail alignments, looking at what gives us the best access for both mountain bikers and resource protection. It's very unique. It's been a very treasured partnership, and I look forward to that partnership for 40 more years.
Washington Wild brings people together in the vigorous defense of our remaining ancient forests, free-flowing rivers, wildlife habitat, and clean air and water.
My name is Brian Cladisby, chairman of the Swinomish tribe, and when Swinomish partnered with Washington Wild, we knew it was going to be a good fit to oppose this mining in the headwaters of the Skagit River, which is the only one in the lower 48 that still has every species of wild salmon still spawning in its tributaries. And in 7 generations, our kids need to be standing here telling the same story to those that need to know.
While much has changed over the past 40 years, our national parks, forests, and other public lands are under increasing threats from unregulated mining, new dam construction, and other development.
You must have good quality water to make good quality beer. Being a craft brewer, and a fairly small craft brewer compared to the big breweries, we're reliant on producing a quality, consistent product. So locally, we try and do a lot to keep our river clean and pure. And working with Washington Wild, it just helps to expand that throughout the state to keep our natural resources pure. And as a brewery, it's just so important.
Key to their success is building powerful grassroots networks and winning coalitions around protecting our public lands and wild places.
The
mission of Washington Wild to make sure that we preserve low areas where families can have access, and for salmon spawning is really critical over the coming 50 years, because that's the kind of wilderness that we will be able to use for generations to come. Washington Wild does a great job that's very unique. It brings together communities, different partnerships to be able to establish the road to get wilderness through Congress. It's not easy to pass legislation. You have to bring people in a community together, different organizations, bring together a whole coalition of people to get the kind of energy to get legislation through Congress. That's what Washington Wild does uniquely and very well.
Join me in supporting Washington Wild's leadership in protecting and defending our local wildlands and waters today and for the next 40 years.
Cool. I hope you all enjoyed that short video narrated by Dan Evans. So now we're going to pivot to talking about our Brewshed Alliance. So if you're not familiar, the Brewshed Alliance is a program by Washington Wild that it's a coalition of over 60 breweries, malt houses, hop growers, restaurants, pubs that basically all rally around us and help advocate for the protection of our wildlands and waterways. So these Brewshed partners, show us a lot of love. So we kind of wanted to support them during this tough time. So we're actually going to hear from Haley over at Peddler Brewing Company. So this event was inspired by a yearly event that we have been doing with Peddler, which is a Earth Day documentary screening every year. But unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, we were unable to do that event this year. So now I'm gonna shoot it over to Haley.
Okay.
Cool. You're good to go.
Hello. This is Colin. He's very excited to see himself on the screen right now. Peddler is also very sad that we can't host this event. We've loved partnering with Washington Wild for a number of years in hosting an Earth Week event. But as you all know, we can't do that. So beyond that, we've also loved doing collaboration brews in support of Washington Wild, and we look forward to being able to do more of that in the future. I was asked to talk a little bit about how you all can help support us during this time. It's obviously a hard time for us. We had to lay off our taproom staff because there is no taproom really for them to serve in right now. Thankfully, we're in a state that has good unemployment and support for laid off workers, and we can't wait to have them back in our space. But for now, Dave and I are basically running the show in the tap room for to-go sales. So if you come by during our open hours, you'll see me or Dave. We are nowadays switching off between childcare as we don't have childcare at the moment anymore, and doing work for the brewery. So he's brewing today and I'm home with the kids, and then I'll be in doing some work tomorrow, and then we swap off in the tap room with to-go sales. So you can order online through our website to have merchandise shipped, or order stuff for pickup, or just come on by Wednesday through Sunday. We're doing growler fills also, which is a great way to, when thinking about things that are more environmentally conscious, growlers are great because they don't use any extra packaging like cans or bottles would do. So you can just bring in your own growler and get it filled up with any of the beers that we have on tap. So that's something that's really important to us to try to do, is minimizing packaging waste. Another thing that we do, when you have beer that are canned, you get the cases, basically a cardboard box that you put it in and then you take it to the stores, and then most of the time those go straight into the recycling. But we've worked hard to try to bring those back home and reuse them as much as possible when we can. So we care a lot about, obviously, all ways of supporting environmental things, but specifically love how Washington Wild does a really good connection for people to understand how important it is to have good water as a way to have good beer. And so we've loved being a Brewster Alliance partner. So thank you for inviting me here tonight to join you all in this conversation. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Haley, for joining us. I personally cannot wait until I can, be back at Peddler drinking beer. But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. Now we're going to pivot to talking about the Wild Olympics campaign. So I'm going to shoot it over to our executive director, Tom, who's going to tell you a little bit more about that. And then we're going to watch a quick video. Cool. Tom, you there?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. So my name's Tom Uniak. I'm the executive director at Washington Wild here, and actually I've been here for 17 years, if you can believe that. It's a great organization. This is our first digital Zoom call in 17 years, so might be a little bit of bumps, but so far so good. So tonight we're focusing on the Wild Olympics, which many of you may know about efforts to protect that area on the Olympic Peninsula, of course. The Wild Olympics campaign, Washington Wild is a founding member of that campaign. It was actually initiated by 4 local organizations on the peninsula, and it really focuses to protect intact forests, free-flowing rivers and streams, and a lot of the values, recreation and otherwise, salmon that we care about, and really provide permanent protection. There are some administrative protections on the landscape on Olympic National Forest, but those are administrative, and as we can see right now in this administration, they are under attack. So looking to kind of protect those for our grandkids. The bill in Congress is sponsored by Senator Patty Murray, who you saw in the earlier video, as well as Congressman Derek Kilmer, both great champions. And their bill, if and when it gets passed, will actually protect 126,000 acres of new wilderness on Olympic National Forest. Wilderness is the highest level of protection we have on our federal lands. No logging, no mining, but it also allows for a number of recreational uses, from hunting to fishing to camping to, all kinds of things. And then it would also protect 460 miles of wild and scenic rivers. Unbelievably, not one of the rivers on the Olympic Peninsula is actually protected by the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, which is hard to believe for those of you that are river rats or paddlers, because some of the best rivers are out there. So this video, I think it's about 8 minutes long. Thanks to Patagonia, who's a great partner of ours, as well as American Whitewater, had a big hand in putting this video together. One last thing, for those of you that saw the video earlier, 2 shout outs. One is to Daniel J. Evans, who is a former Washington senator and governor, and happens to be also a Republican, but no one has done more for protecting wilderness in the state than Daniel J. Evans. And so we're really excited to have him narrate that for us in our 40th anniversary video. Secondly, we worked with Christopher Daniels, who's a local filmmaker, to actually do that video, and Spry Media Studios is his outfit. So thanks to Chris for doing a great job. So with that, I'll go ahead and let Chris show the video and talk to you on the other end.
The temperate rainforests are magnificent. One enters these deep forests of big trees, light coming through the forest at an angle, always the sound of wild rivers rumbling by somewhere. It's just a really spectacular place.
decided to go on the road for the next 2 years and live on the road is because I find it to be very important to transition to protecting these places from just simply recreating on them. My name is Susan Elliott.
I'm Adam Elliott. Together we're the Wild River Life. We're traveling around the United States. We're going to be kayaking, pack rafting, fishing.
And this week we are traveling around the Olympic Peninsula and exploring the rivers of the Wild Olympics. The rivers out here are just in such a pristine, beautiful place, creating such healthy ecosystems that we just find very few other places.
This spot right here, there's a rock outcrop that goes like out into the river channel. If we wanted to do like one more thing.
Tom is the Pacific Northwest Stewardship Director for American Whitewater, and his work has spanned the entire Pacific Northwest in protecting rivers from the threats that they have and maintaining access to them for recreation. And Tom is going to show us them, sort of his backyard stashes of beautiful river systems and creeks that are here on the Olympic Peninsula.
American Whitewater is a river conservation organization that represents the whitewater paddling community. We're all about protecting, enjoying, and restoring rivers. But that interest extends beyond just the recreational experience. It extends to protecting a river and all of its values so people can enjoy it, but also so the ecosystem can be maintained in its healthy state. I think what's unique about the Olympic Peninsula is the tremendous amount of rainfall that these rivers get. The atmospheric river that comes off the Pacific Ocean hits the Olympic Mountains, and there's really very few places like it on the planet.
Boy, the first day out on the water on the Olympic Peninsula has been really nice. Super clear water. Couldn't be a more beautiful afternoon. Looking forward to more.
I think my perspective on the river is continually changing by the people that I meet that enjoy it in different ways.
Hi, Ashley.
We're really excited to meet Ashley and learn how to fish from her, specifically because she comes from a community of people, her tribe, that has subsisted on salmon in these fisheries for thousands and thousands of years. And so she's bringing with her that heritage of understanding of river systems.
My name is Ashley Nicole Lewis, and I'm a member of the Quinault Indian Nation, and I'm a fishing guide on the Olympic Peninsula. Our rivers are run by the Quinault Indian Nation, and so the way that they manage it is different than the way that other rivers are managed. And we get fish back that are bigger, and we get more fish back than anywhere else in the Pacific Northwest.
This fish likely is going to stay at the bottom because it's large and it can hold you there, and then it's going to take off downriver. And we have collectively tried to pull it in for the better part of the last 25 minutes. This fish still, even at this point in the fight, this fish should be exhausted and it is still pulling him upriver. Nice and smooth, nice and even. This is a good fish. This is a hell of a catch. And a hell of a fighter. Steelhead are particularly spirited. So as soon as you touch him, he's going to lose his mind.
What's so amazing about coming out here is that I expect the habitat, the fishing, the area to be as it should have been, as nature's course allows it to be.
I'm really excited to go out with Tim in person because he knows these landscapes very intimately as a local resident for decades, but also it's his job to understand and explore and write about these places, share them with others.
I'm Tim McNulty. I'm a poet and nature writer, a conservationist. The Olympic rivers are unique, each one a little bit different than the others. They have their own magnificent wild salmon runs, their microclimates, forests, wildlife habitats, loads of different river recreational experiences.
Tim has lived on the Olympic Peninsula from the early 80s, and he's really been able to see how the place has been changing over the years.
I spend a lot of time rambling in the mountains, hiking, so my focus on the rivers has been how they fit into this whole larger experience, this whole magical forest ecosystem here. In the 70s, we had healthy salmon runs. People took rivers for granted. By the early 21st century, here on the Olympic Peninsula, 4 or 5 salmon listed under the Threatened and Endangered Species Act, development going on in rivers, people began to understand that these are resources that can be lost.
It's always sobering when the elders talk about what it used to be like and how amazing salmon fishing used to be. And I want it to be that way for future generations too. And part of that is really being on top of the conservation piece.
Land protection on the Olympic Peninsula got an early start, late 1800s. However, rivers protection on the peninsula hasn't really come to the fore until the last few decades.
The Wild Olympics bill is a piece of legislation that was developed over many years. The legislation would protect 126,000 acres of new wilderness areas. It'll be the first piece of legislation to permanently protect the free-flowing rivers that flow out of Olympic National Park and then out onto the National Forest.
It is a new beginning for recreation and ecologic protection on the Olympic Peninsula. I think, to me, it gives us hope for restoration activities all around the country.
Essentially, right here on the Olympic Peninsula, these rivers are as healthy as they can be. To protect them now, before there's that many threats, that's what's at stake here. Find that value in the way that they are and the way that they could be.
There's so many places in the United States where we're trying to heal river systems and bring back the natural fisheries, the natural landscape, whereas here on the Olympic Peninsula, that's already in place. There's ecosystems that are healthy and thriving, and it's really important that we're able to put a layer of protection on places like that.
Cool. I hope all of you really enjoyed that video. I personally really love the cinematography that was in there. Yeah, so now I'm going to throw it over to Evan, one of my colleagues at Washington Wild. Okay, Evan, you there?
I am here. Thank you,
Cool.
Chris. Hello, everyone. My name's Evan. I'm the Director of Development here at Washington Wild, and I just got to say, we miss you. Our Washington Wild community is so generous, adventurous, and inspiring to us as a staff. And we're so excited that everyone was able to join us this evening and are very proud of the work that we're doing on the Wild Olympics and our efforts to protect this area. As you're all aware, we're a local organization who's been doing this for over 40 years. And as we deliver this message to you from our homes and practicing social distancing, we hope that this happy hour inspired you to look towards the future and getting back to our favorite places, sharing these wild lands and waters with our loved ones and protecting them for future generations to come. So as a local environmental organization, we know our work is important and it needs to be sustained. And so in recognizing the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, we have a goal this week of bringing on 50 donors to support our organization, if you can. And we actually have a really unique opportunity with a gift match of $2,500, thanks to some of our board members and major donors, which means that your gift will be doubled. So if you feel inclined, please make a donation that is meaningful to you on our website at WAWILD, that's wowwild.org. Again, we miss you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Stay safe out there. Thank you, and I will send it back to Chris.
Cool. Thanks, Evan. Now we've got about 6 minutes left. And so we're gonna do a Q&A with our executive director, Tom.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you now.
Great. Hey, yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chris. So, yeah, that video, there were a couple folks in there that I work with a lot on the Wild Olympics campaign. Tim McNulty, who's a renowned kind of poet and author on the Olympic Peninsula, was in that, as well as American Whitewater, Tom O'Keefe from American Whitewater. So I did see a couple of questions on the chat. One is that how can you get a map of Wild Olympics? Well, two ways. One is you can go to our website, click on Protect Wild Olympics, and you'll see the Destination Wild Olympics map, which will show the areas we're trying to protect, but also some of the hikes and other recreational values and activities that are out there for you. You can also get that on the wildolympics.org site as well. I also saw another question that was asking about why these wilderness and wild scenic river bills actually get kind of lumped into larger bills. That happened on a couple of previous bills that we've worked on that actually got designated, which was the Alpine Lakes and the Wild Sky. And for the last 20, 30 years, frankly, Congress has not been kind of following the normal process of taking a vote on a legislation and going through the process. Instead, they tend to put them all together at the end of a session and a kind of a public lands omnibus bill, which is, basically how these pieces of legislation pass. And that's a little unique in the last 20 years, but that's kind of the way it happens in Washington, D.C. So Chris, did we have any questions from folks that you saw?
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on one of them. But yeah, people feel free to, submit questions in the chat. But can you talk a little bit about what the Wild Olympics has to do with the Elwha dams?
Yeah, so the Elwha Dam restoration, I think a lot of people obviously know about. It's the Seattle Times. Linda Mapes is a great columnist, has written quite a bit about it, as well as written a book. It's the largest restoration project in the history of the federal government. It's a big deal. It restores a 100-year salmon run by removing two dams on the Elwha River that have been blocked to salmon habitat for 100 years. The tribes locally have been big proponents for this. Already, scientifically, we're seeing incredible changes by restoring that river, which has been documented in the Seattle Times and elsewhere. Fish are coming back. How it relates to Wild Olympics is that what we're trying to do is do two things. One is we want to protect what we have, and we want to restore what we've lost. Elwha dam removal is a perfect example of restoring what we've lost. Really important, hard to do, very expensive, but again, really important stuff. What Wild Olympics is protecting what we have. What we're trying to do with Wild Olympics is actually protect the forests that are already intact, that are already free-flowing rivers, and we want to keep them that way so that our grandkids' are going to be able to enjoy those values as well. And so what that takes is an act of Congress in Washington, D.C., which is not particularly easy, but it's also not particularly expensive. It requires a lot of patience. Chris, were there any other questions?
Cool. Can you talk a little bit about what happens next with the Wild Olympics legislation?
Yeah, so right now the bill is in Congress. That's the U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C. A few months ago, we actually had a big milestone. Not only did we pass the House committee, but the House of Representatives passed the bill as well through the whole House, which is a big deal. And that's the first time that's happened for really since the almost 8 years or so that we've been working on this. So that's a big deal. Now it has to pass the Senate, where Senator Murray, our champion, is working hard to figure out opportunities for that. We're in the second year of a 2-year congressional session. So basically we have to the end of the year to try to make that happen. And if we do, then it can be signed into law as a next step. So that's what we're working towards going forward.
Yeah, so we have one more question, but I will say we are just about at 6:30 now, but Tom, if you have a few more minutes to answer one more question, we'll go for it. So Max, cool. So Max is asking, does the bill increase the amount of wilderness on the peninsula?
So yeah, it would increase. It would add 126,000 acres of new wilderness on Olympic National Forest. It doesn't do anything with park wilderness, but most of the park is actually designated as wilderness thanks to Daniel J. Evans, who narrated our video in 1980, and I'm sorry, in 1988. So it would add 126,000 acres of intact forests, of salmon spawning streams, of old growth forests on the Olympic National Forest. And it would also designate 460 miles of wild and scenic rivers around the peninsula, including the park and the forest. And there are no wild and scenic rivers designated on the peninsula right now.
Cool. Well, it looks like we are right at 6:30 and don't have any more questions. So I think we'll just wrap it up here. But I want to thank everyone for joining us, you know, for this, our first ever virtual event as Washington Wild. But we'll be back tomorrow night and every evening up until Thursday. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the Skagit headwaters. It should be, you know, hopefully very interesting, and we look forward to seeing you. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and we'll see you back again tomorrow.